There are few things more standard in Age of Empires 2 than setting up trade in a team game. But have you ever thought about how big the investment is, how long before it pays off, and whether just selling excess food and wood is a better strategy? A few days ago, I posted on Reddit asking the Age of Empires 2 community whether anyone had made a video or done the calculations on this. I asked if anyone had data on how long before the investment into team game trading pays off. The response was unanimous. I must be crazy. Of course you should trade in a team game, and that trade carts pay off in their first trip. But it became clear to me after a rudimentary simulation in the editor that trading is much worse than the numbers suggest. It also became clear that even 20 years after this game's release, nobody had answered my question with data, simulation, or math. On Reddit, they tried to answer it with guesstimates, insults, overconfidence, no actual simulated trade cart trip times, and it was around those spreadsheets. Their sad devotion to an ancient religion hasn't helped them do math. The irony is that it doesn't take a lot of work in the editor to very quickly find out that the return trip for a trade cart is around double what you are expecting based on the tile distance and the trade cart speed. Yeah, double. So if your theory is that trade cart pays off in one trip, you might want to have figured out how long one trip takes. I found their lack of faith disturbing. Hokey religions and ancient weapons are no match for a good, nerdy analysis at your side. So I said to my friend, "Help me, JP, you're my only hope." So how long does it take before ramping up into market trade before you see the benefit to using your population and resources on that versus simply chopping wood and selling it for gold in the market? I ran my scenario simulations on the map Black Forest, but this analysis applies to any map where you have wood to last for an hour-long game, which should be most maps. So let's discuss the two sides that we're comparing. We have the trader and the seller. The trader is going to build 4 markets in the back of his base, research caravan, and queue up trade carts to send to a friendly market well across the map in this 8-player scenario map. I chose a random map well suited for trading, and you will see here that there are lots of examples of random maps that are well worse suited to trading, either due to having large forests in the back, a lack of good straight line path, a nearly unwallable boundary, or just that a player on one end has a base with almost no room at the back for markets. The trader is going to ramp up to 40 total trade carts, and his 3 computer teammates will each have 20 trade carts to simulate standard trade traffic. Buildings and villagers will be placed suitably to simulate bases being congested in a typical game. The seller is going to use that equal population to have his excess villagers coming off stone or gold mines go and chop wood. So as soon as 4 trade carts are queued up by the trader, 4 villagers will start chopping wood for the seller, and so on until each have 40 population spaces working towards their income. This removes population limit arguments from the equation, as each player has the same remaining population to devote to military, villagers for food, wood, construction, etc. This was very easy to verify in the editor, as I just plopped 4 villagers onto wood every 51 seconds, which is how long it takes to create a trade cart, and made sure the spreadsheet was estimating this closely. 4 villagers may not look like much, but they got it where it counts. So let's take a look at the Google Doc, which is linked below. Here you can see the data for this trade route, 106 gold per trip, which is 193 tiles in length, the projected speed, and the build time for the trade carts. This 0% for the time penalty is the reason that for 20 years people have been overestimating the return on investment into trade. G3V3 on Reddit told me 0% was my father. No, 89% is your father. 0% is why you fail. 89% is my best fit for the scenario data through testing. So about double the time you'd expect a trade cart to take to come back. Let's take a moment here to watch trade carts do their thing. Poorly. These aren't the fast trade carts you're looking for. They won't make the Kessel run in 12 parsecs. The force is with them, if by force you mean the desire to run into things. This is how trade efficiency dies, with thunderous puns. They're just slow trade carts, slowly trying to slowly make their way in the universe. I'll try spinning, that's a neat trick. So here in row 1, let's take the first wave of 4 trade carts, cart team 1. On their first trip, you'd expect them to return to the market with their collected gold in 3.71 minutes, or about 3 minutes and 43 seconds in game time. Here's that math. First you have 51 seconds just to create them. Then you figure out their time to go, which is 2 times 193 tiles one way to get the round trip, divided by 2.25 tiles per second speed, which equals 223 seconds, or that 3 minutes and 43 seconds. There's just one problem. It doesn't come back at 3:43 at all. So I tested it in the scenario, and it comes back closer to 6 minutes and 8 seconds on average. The circle is now complete. That is a big effing difference. This means that at 6 minutes, you've built or are currently producing 32 trade carts for a total resource burn of $4,800 and haven't seen a dime of return on your investment. 4,800 total resources is 40 manga die. That's a pretty significant hole to dig into at a critical juncture in most games. Each row is a trip, and you can see that eventually cart team 1 makes its second return trip, returning around the 11 minute and 40 second mark since trade started. At this time, the seller has had the equivalent of 27 wood choppers for that same duration of time. Obviously staggeringly starting 4 at a time until he gets up to a higher number, chopping around a total of 19,000 worth of wood, which has the cost of lumber camps baked into it. This sells for $1,260 in gold in the market. And you can see the spreadsheet projection closely matches this, projecting $1,231 for this duration. There's obviously a little bit of randomness here. This $1,231 in profit is basically the seller's bottom line. He has no expenses to add to this. It is all profit. The trader, on the other hand, has invested $1,100 in 4 markets plus the caravan upgrade seen here. He's invested another $2,560 in trade carts if we generously assume all trade cart wood is at the rock bottom 14 out of 100 market price, which is usually not the case for most of the time that trade carts are built early on. So his revenue and cost statement reads $3,400 gold revenue less $3,660 total costs equals a negative $260. So nearly 12 minutes in, seller is ahead by $1,491 in gold profit, about 1,500 resources. You can see this $1,491 here, and what we are looking for is a few cells lower where this number becomes positive. Here at 13 minutes and 54 seconds, nearly 14 minutes in, the trader has finally earned back his investment and has more gold than the seller. The conclusion is that it takes somewhere in the neighborhood of almost 14 minutes in game time for ramping into trade to pay off. To me, this is an eternity, and way more than I've been thinking for the past 20 years. Those 40 extra manga die that the seller can afford with what the trader spent on ramping into trade can easily decide the game. They can easily end up raiding your trade route before you even make a dime. They can tip the scales in a battle that occurs in the next 14 minutes, and even a few extra troops, to say nothing of 40 manga die, can result in a catastrophic loss of your entire military and the loss of the game. It also ignores inflation. Would you rather have 40 manga die at 31 minutes of game time or at 45 minutes? Note that 14 minutes is just to break even. Trader has to wait for several minutes past that before he ends up with significantly more gold than the seller. Something else you might find interesting is that at the break-even point in the spreadsheet, a trader has to have earned around $5,500 in trade revenue in order to have beaten the seller. What this means is that when you look at the end-of-game statistics, and these are from a game I played this weekend, anyone who has trade revenue but isn't well over $5,500 in revenue lost money on that investment. So while trading has its merits in a game that goes very long, we can definitively point out that in this game, anyone who invested in trade made a mistake. All this isn't to say trading is a lousy idea. but it's worth knowing the statistics and the simulated data that plays into this investment decision, which might be a lot longer to return its investment than you may have realized, as it was for me. It's not such a no-brainer as a lot of people think it is. It takes a long time before that investment into trading breaks even versus selling wood in the market. If you don't think the game will go that long, or if you want to push an early Imperial Age advantage, you should at least consider the alternatives. If you aspire to booming into an even longer game and believe you have the defenses and the time to get trade going, I would simply say, be careful not to choke on your aspirations.